Still in court.
Yeah.
No, nothing determined yet.
Right.
Still.
Is property on 10 next to the dollar store that been readdressed?
Okay, and I'll give you an update on that. What's going on there is, I pushed back on the Marshall County Building Department because the building's not completed. They're occupying it, and also talked to their plan director because they're not using it as they applied for it. So I'm trying to get as much help from them as possible. You're talking about the one next to Boatsman, right?
Now, I'm actually talking about both property.
Oh,
But I know the other one, you're still
No, the
trying
other-
to deal with that. I know
the other one's,
But as far as
This
both,
Shimoleski property, right?
Shimoleski.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
But I'm talking about both of us now because I know it's been addressed before and it was cleaned up. I'll leave it that, but it's not now.
We haven't addressed that because Boatsman is got the property over on Jefferson. So we've been trying to get a resolution on that. That's turned over to the unsafe board. Right now, they're planning on going in and cleaning that up and putting a lien on the property.
That's the
I
one
didn't
on
know that it
Jefferson.
seemed like it's
That's what,
That's the one on Jefferson, I'm sorry.
yes, yeah, the one that had the fire
I'm sorry, no, what's the other Boatsman property again?
on State Road 10.
Residential.
residential
Okay. Okay,
It's
right next to it.
becoming trash
You
again,
know, it's
unkempt again.
very unkempt. I mean,
Okay.
it's getting to be a nuisance problem where it is now. The other,
and what was the update on the one at 10 West Jefferson?
The county unsafe board
Okay,
has declared that an unsafe property, and their plan is to get someone in there to clean it up. Then they will put a lien against the property.
got it.
So we have representatives on the unsafe board, and that's what I
right,
put
so
over
they're
there.
in their hand. You didn't say 110. There.
17.
It was 17. And just
Right, 17.
to correct down, that's where you. I know. Oh, all right.
Just a question, since you're addressing that unsightly thing. Can we do the same with the movie theater downtown? What's good, how long is that gonna sit there before somebody, or it's torn down or somebody does something with it?
David, I think it actually changed ownership about a year ago. And, right?
I don't know.
Yeah. I think
Somebody
it-
took over the project about a year ago.
Yeah.
Right, and I don't know at this point, and I don't think they've done anything, but yeah, you're right, it needs to be addressed.
Big time,
Yeah,
big time.
and I'm sorry, just for the minutes.
Name and address.
Yeah,
Dave Partridge,
David, what's your last name again?
Partridge,
Okay. And address for the minutes?
203 South Ohio Street.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Anybody know what an address is on that? I'm trying to find the owner. Any of those places? Lake House.
Two down, Lake House, I don't know.
I haven't been able to find out here. Don't know
It's
what
actually
name.
cornering.
Why don't you order some pizza from Bourbon Street, and it's right next door.
Gotta be whatever number our department is. Okay, about 3.
Right.
You think you know who won?
I thought that, the gal worked at the academy. Sort of,
Did work there, you mean?
she did work there.
She was managing.
Yeah.
I was managing it,
Oh, you probably,
Leah, yeah.
She was actually,
she was,
managing that for Wayne.
yeah,
Okay, it's,
on around.
the owner right now shows as Bob's Country Bunker LLC.
Bob's what?
Country bunker.
Country bunker.
That sounds like something Tom would
Wow,
say.
she's turned it into a,
That probably is Tom Wayne.
Yeah,
Maybe,
it's the Bluegrass Bar from Blues Brothers.
yeah, say maybe he is the Country Bunker.
Yeah, he named it after the Bluegrass Bar.
I mean, he even goes by Gadsby.
Got one.
Got all that done.
I got,
It changed hands, somewhere around May 1st.
This year.
oh, I was right. Didn't I stand?
Dick Cheney.
Boom,
Or did-
bingo.
Maybe
really did, I didn't.
Change
No.
name.
Changed the
change names.
Oh, come on. You're throwing me on the bus now, Chuck. Okay, yeah. I thought I had a W there.
No,
It's not making any money, but
Okay, so, yeah, so you just changed
it's,
names.
James Balls,
you got him down.
BALTZ. is the owner.
Who?
James BALTZ. He's the one paying taxes.
That's it.
That seems
That's the same guy?
What's
Joel,
his-
you're talking about?
What's his first name?
James.
James.
Oh, that's not
His
who
accountant-
you're talking about.
Oh,
His accountant is named James, but
Uh,
I'm not sure what his last name is.
And is that who's been sending the checks?
Yeah, that's who always sends all the checks, if there is a check.
Back in 205, it was James Baker.
Yeah, Joe Baker. He's deceased.
And then it went to
Bickle?
Mhm.
a lien, sold at the tax sale. Somebody redeemed it. 2015, and about all I can tell you. They're paying about, let's see. Looks like the taxes went up this year to 3,900. They've been paying about 1,200 to 2,000, now so it's 3,900.
Why did they have that increase in that assessment? That's a big jump.
Something they probably had to apply for, either permit changes or change in use or something. That's the only reason the assessment changed.
Is there anything you're aware of that would, I mean, it's unsightly, but that weren't putting it on the unsafe list?
Well, I've looked at it
The roof would
a
be.
couple of days ago. I'm Marquee.
Yeah.
Marquee is hanging there.
Okay.
That, to me, that appears to be unsafe. You agree?
Yeah.
So,
I think those are issues probably could be addressed on that. But I know as far as, I don't know if they've ever done anything, the structure part on that roof and all that stuff. I knew it was in this process at one time. You might know more about that than I do.
Last I knew, they shored up the inside, did some roof work and got all the scaffolding out from inside. So as far as I know, the roof has been shored up about a few years.
Because I know they're talking about putting beams across and things up.
It hasn't been patched very well, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
As far as the roof itself, but the roof itself wasn't much concerned in. I thought about the whole roof.
It's more than just a tarp.
Exactly.
Mhm.
I mean, I'd love to see it come back to life.
Just, it came up, and you guys don't go to the redevelopment commission meetings. It came up at the redevelopment commission meetings that there needs to be some coordination between your group and that group. Because properties like the theater are in the TIF district. and they need to be removed from the TIF district, or it's a negative against the TIF district
Gotta keep on that.
if you tear it down, without getting it removed from the TIF district. It counts against the TIF district. So when you took the property out, we recommended the C2 to come out. That C2 parcel is in the TIF district. So when you're getting to these points, it probably needs to be a discussion, give them a heads up so they can decide what they need to do with the TIF too, because you guys really don't talk on those things and you really are related on those things.
That was something I didn't want to bring up tonight too, as far as commission members concerned. I'm glad you brought that up, but it just puts it more on my mind than what it was.
Well, it's like, it's the theater, and then you're talking about Boatsmiths. Boatsmiths is in the TIF district too. And it does have a value now, and it will go to nearly zero. Well, basically the improvements are what the TIF is affected. So the TIF improvements will go to zero, which means it's a negative. It counts against their other TIF money.
When you say Boatsmans, you're talking about in Jefferson Street.
Jefferson Street, yes.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the questions that I was gonna have tonight, and I'll address it now, just to the fact, is I know that the Dollar General, when it went in, and it was never discussed as far as TIF. And basically, I know very little about the process of TIF. And I guess one of my main questions was where does the planning commission come in? Because I mean, I know as far as what's been told and what's been reported, whatever, not to bring that up. But I'm not sure as far as where the responsibility falls when it comes up to the TIF. I mean, is it the planning commission as well as, I'm not trying to cop out, I'm trying to.
If you're asking me, it's not the plan commission's responsibility to do anything with the TIF, but it would be a courtesy type of thing that if you're getting ready to rezone something or talk about tearing something down, it would be a courtesy thing to let them know so they can do their job. It's not your job to determine what the TIF is,
Exactly.
but it's just a notification type of thing.
I mean, I know what it is, I just don't know how the process.
Maybe we could get one of those CRC members to become a member of the planning commission.
That would be a big plus.
We have no idea. No idea what we're talking about.
And I'm not
I feel
blaming,
like I do a little
yeah, I'm
bit.
not blaming you guys,
Getting
but it's,
pieces of, something that we don't know.
I know in the past, and there's only been really one or two issues ever came up before the planning commission, and Ralph Winters was president of the planning commission at the time. I couldn't tell you what properties even came up at the time. But that is the only time that, and since he was president of the planning commission that was bringing this up, I don't know if Ralph was on the redevelopment committee or not, but he was actually notified by somebody, or he wouldn't have brought it up. And I didn't know if it was my responsibility to find this out beforehand. If it is, I want to know, because if I'm not doing my job, I want to do what I'm supposed to do.
I don't think it's your responsibility to do anything with the TIF.
Not with the TIF, but
But
as
what
far
I'm
as
suggesting
not zoning
is-
until we know.
Right, if you're gonna rezone something, or you're going to recommend to Chuck that something gets torn down, it would be good to let someone from the redevelopment commission know that.
Right.
This would generally be something that, in my mind, the town manager does, but the town manager doesn't attend all of either meetings. And there's a whole legal process with taking something in and out of the TIF. So, for example, we seem to be on track with the Collins project, because it was well known enough that they're looking about what it would take to get that into the TIF and stuff. But
You're
there's
talking about the one.
right,
The warehouse.
but there's a timeline there that it's almost as long for them to make a change in the TIF as it is for you to do a rezoning. So they need to kind of start at the same time you're considering something, so that they're in the loop too.
But are you suggesting any time that we look at a commercial property that the redevelopment committee should know about it? I mean, in our eyes, we wouldn't know one way or the other whether it's going to go to TIF, but before that public hearing for the rezoning, if it is coming up, somebody wanting to rezone for C2, C1, whatever, before it ever comes to planning commission, you think it ought to be justified as far as a redevelopment committee
Yeah.
or?
Just a heads up that something's going to change because it affects where those tax dollars go. And it can't be done after the fact. It's got to be done ahead of time.
Because I mean, right now, we do post ahead of time for a public hearing for that rezoning.
But just like Danny said, he doesn't know what's going on at the redevelopment commission. They don't pay attention to what's going on here. If it's not something that affects them, they're not going to know. I'm just making a suggestion that
Oh, yeah.
when you're
I know.
having,
We need,
when these things come
That's-
up,
That's what I'm looking for, is suggestions. I mean, the heads up thing as far as trying to get a hold of somebody in the redevelopment committee to tell them what's going on prior to the meeting, another thing. Right now, I mean, it's our responsibility to post it, showing it to the public hearing, and it actually says what it is. I mean, would it be, and it sounds like I'm passing a buck, but I'm not. I just didn't know, is there a problem with the redevelopment committee actually knowing what's posted anytime something comes up? Especially since TIP is as important as what it is. I'm just trying to see what we.
I guess what I'm suggesting is in a case like tonight, if there had been something that came up, if someone had come in and says, I'm thinking about doing this, that's not going to really show up in your minutes. And it wasn't a full public hearing and Jenny's not here. The town manager's not here. So maybe it's something where the secretary or you, Barry, give Jenny a heads up and say, hey, something's going on with this property. It's not been publicized. It's not going to show up otherwise, but redevelopment and you need to get on board with this because something's happening. Sometimes it's to the advantage of that owner that's planning on doing something, doesn't know what the redevelopment commission can do for him too. So it might help a project move forward if that piece were tied in. It's the typical thing we have. We don't talk well. And like Chuck just said, there's nobody on the redevelopment commission on this one. There's nobody from the plan commission on that one. It could be the same thing. You should send somebody over there, but it just doesn't happen. I'm just making the suggestion, particularly when you're talking about tearing something down, that's a negative dollar effect on the TIF district.
Right.
And I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Boatsmith probably needs to come down, but it's got some value now that everything. For those of you who don't know, TIF, when it's established at TIF, that's the value. If somebody improves it, the redevelopment commission gets money above what that established value is. If you tear that building down,
goes down.
that drops down, but the established value is still here. So even though they're getting money from something else, it gets subtracted from this one.
Right.
So that's why you need to let them know, if you can, that something's going to happen. It's a slow process. But they don't pay any attention either. It's a education thing, so.
All right, in a situation like that, not to make this discussion longer, when you do, like, if you're saying, all right, the property is going down, it's dilapidated, whatever, is that a long process as far as removing it from TIF?
They have to hire lawyers. They have to do a lot of the same things you're doing to get it torn down. They've got to go through that process too, record it, advertise it, take it out of the TIF.
And that property still zoned as C2, C1,
Doesn't change the
whatever it
zoning.
was, it doesn't make any difference. But then something comes in, somebody can develop something on that property, then you have to go back to the same process and.
Which is what they would generally want to do. If you tear down a C2 property,
And I'm just asking for the process.
We'll just-
That's the whole-
just talk about Boatsmiths right now.
Yeah.
If you tear it down without telling them, then they've got a negative on it. What they would probably want to do is take Boatsmith's property, take it out of the TIF, and as soon as you tear it down, put it right back in the TIF. Because now it's starting at zero, and anything that's done on that, they capture the value coming in. But
Right,
they've got to know to
but
do
they know
that,
ahead of time what process they gotta go through.
because they found out on some of them that they've missed it. Dollar General is a good example. They could have pulled that into the TIF. They didn't do it. They've missed it on some improvements on different things. All of our little groups like this are not very nimble. So it takes a little time to make the things happen.
And it does. And I mean, under normal, if you're coming headstrong, straight ahead, it still don't take time. But would you think that even like when the minutes or the agenda is made out, if it was copied to leader of the redevelopment committee, would that be a step forward to that, or?
That's an improvement on what we have right now.
Because, I mean, they'll see that there's no C2 changes, no zoning approach. But even on that agenda, I mean, we don't, sometimes we do have property on the agenda as far as what's gonna be discussed. But after it's already taken point and voted, I mean, that's out of our hands at this point. But,
It's more of a problem for them with the properties that are already in town or in the TIF district, those type of things, because it's not a rezoning, so it doesn't show up. When it's something like Collins Project south of the cemetery, okay, there's enough moving parts in there. They heard about it. So now they're thinking, do we put that in the TIF? Can we make that happen?
flat coming back, you'll hear about it, yeah.
Right.
Can they put it in the TIF?
They haven't decided yet, but they're talking about it.
I was meaning, I thought TIF had to be relatively contiguous, like it had.
It does. But contiguous can mean it runs 2 inches wide all the way down and there it is. You know, a lot of times they follow right of ways. It doesn't have to pick up all the properties. If you look at it on here, the big chunk down here at the bottom's in pink, then it runs up Main Street and there's almost nothing until you get downtown. Then it gets pink out again, picks up the cove. It grows and shrinks as it goes. It does have to be contiguous, but it doesn't have to be by much.
Okay.
Much less than you have to do for annexation. Annexation's got to have a lot more contiguous than TIF district does.
Didn't used to, yeah, I do now. I mean, I would make that suggestion, as far as any time that, I mean, whether it be, flag C2, C1, as far as the agenda goes. I mean, that would automatically be copied to whoever.
But-
Redevelopment committee.
But if we can think about it, if it becomes a thing to think about it, and the next step is, if David were here tonight to talk about a project, and just like I did last month and said, I'm just kind of feeling you out on this, we should raise a flag because redevelopment could help him.
Right.
But he doesn't know about redevelopment in TIF districts. They don't know to go to him. He came here first because it's a zoning and construction issue. So if we can kind of pull them in quicker, because he may come out of this meeting thinking, it's a marginal project. I don't know if I can do it. You guys are telling me there's no sewer and water to the property. And if he goes to the redevelopment, they could say, yeah, there's no redevelopment, there's no water and sewer there, but we can pay for that. And we'll make something work in order to get this. So we capture the new value. But if they don't know, they can't help.
And I like that. I mean, we've got enough members that should remember that C2 now is a flag to me. I think it would be to other members.
Anything in the pink and green right now. It's just a comment that
Right, no.
I know it's being
appreciate
discussed at redevelopment. They're not sure what to do about it. You guys are one of the ones that see things first.
that.
I
They're
think
the ones that can actually hurt the whole process, but not care.
I think it's a matter of bringing everybody on the same page.
It is.
Because that, I know that the vice president of CRC resigned because of his presentation he gave the town board about how basically they've squandered $500,000. And I don't know how accurate that is or anything, but it caused his wife to resign from the BZA. And it's like, wait a second, is there really something here to look at or not? I don't know that. Because I don't understand it, Kevin. That's what we're talking about. We're not all educated on this, and we need to be educated, whether it's a work session or something, to understand and bring everybody on the same page to know what's going on. Because we don't.
Yeah.
Right?
You're 100% right. That's the reason I would want to know as far as where responsibility, and part of that responsibility is on us.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what else to add.
But if you look at your responsibilities, it's not.
It's not a
it's
responsibility.
not what we need to know about,
but it's-
But
We're
I'm
part
just
of
making a
part of
suggestion.
the process.
if we're hindering the process by not getting that notification to the redevelopment committee, because the redevelopment committee is not to be standing out there watching every piece of property out there to, you know what I'm saying? And they're not gonna be notified unless.
I wouldn't be so negative to say that you're hindering, but I'm saying you could help.
Right, but I'm saying if we don't help,
Yeah, I guess I would
we
also,
are hindering.
I would push back slightly and say the CRC has some responsibility to educate itself. Because not to be defensive about my minutes, but that whole presentation from last month about could we, would we, should we, it's all written up in the minutes. All I gotta do is read it. And
I'm not going to defend them on that either.
Walk
I'm
you
just,
over and say, hey, please, please, please read these really scintillating minutes.
Maybe there needs to be a representative from each board on the other board.
Well, that's asking for other people to step in when they already got responsibilities where they're at.
You know?
and you can't, and you don't have control over that because it's an appointed position and
They're already doing.
We're already doing it, yeah.
Yes, but the information could be passed from group to group.
You gotta change pages.
honestly, I think, I'm just saying that you guys need to be aware of it. And 9 times out of 10, the town manager is that person. But like I'm saying, we're having this conversation tonight about some properties maybe added to the unsafe building. She's not here. So that's where I don't know if she reads the minutes or if she's going to pick that up or will she make the leap? I'm just saying, if I tell you 7 guys, this is something to think about, maybe it'll stick with one of you
It's
and it
another
will
possibility.
help a little bit. So
To have the town manager in both meetings too.
Well,
To pass that information between both.
he is, that's, I'm saying she, but that's part of the town manager's job is to make that coordination.
Sounds even better.
But you can't expect them to remember every little thing like
No,
that. So
and that was the reason I thought if we had something in writing each time, in other words, if it's copied to the redevelopment community, I think that copy would be a big start.
I agree.
I mean, I would like to see that if it's all possible to get that on there.
And maybe it's as simple as when after you approve the minutes, copy needs to be stuck in the president of the redevelopment commission's box. Boom.
Yeah, I mean,
not sure.
Thanks.
I agree with that. I mean, I don't think it's something we need to vote on, but it'd be something that we need. to
It's
do.
just-
Right.
Just a suggestion.
Right.
I was at the meeting last night listening to things and I thought, okay, you guys don't hear what they're talking about either.
No, this is right here. I mean, I understand Don's position on that too. I mean, 100% right. I mean, we have to examine what we're gonna be considering. I think they ought to too. Not blame nothing meant on that. It's just maybe everybody just needs to do their job a little better. I do too. And
I'm just pointing out that you guys get the first heads up usually.
right.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's a good point. Appreciate it.
I doesn't have anything to do on evenings. He can come to the redevelopment commission.
I've been to one meeting and that's the turmoil meeting. You probably don't want me to.
Go back again.
So speaking of education, you said we need to educate ourselves. Somebody wanted to educate themselves on what TIF stands for.
TIF stands for tax incremental financing.
Thank you.
And it's if you were to, you can Google it and there's a bunch of different things that.
Actually, I did.
That's easy, Andy.
I did,
That's
I
easy.
did a little heads up on this.
But there is actually a state statute that goes along with it and there's rules that they have to follow.
It shows that there is a process that has to be done yearly. And so, I mean, it's a lot more complex than what I even had any idea of.
And it's one of the things that the state legislature likes to play with almost every session. So it's a constant battle to keep up on it because it's a changing thing.
But I mean, isn't like the town budget and everything even based partially off that tip as well? right?
No.
Or just.
The town budget is separate from the TIF,
Okay,
but the town often uses money. They go to the redevelopment commission and ask for money for infill. So as in last night, Wayne was at the redevelopment commission. Normally he would not be there asking for a car, but because the town's budget is strapped and there's been so much that's gone into emergency services, they need a new car. So he's gone to the town, to the TIF district, to the redevelopment commission to ask for that. Redevelopment commission paid for a water tower, some other infrastructure
I
things.
knew that process,
So it just,
that was done.
it's
I
not
did
part of the town's
process.
budget. It's a separate budget.
Yeah.
But it's theoretically, they are all appointed by the town board like you are, so they should be following what the town council wants. I feel like we need that rainbow, the more you know.
And, yeah. Dave, you don't know anything of the way today, right? All right, we're on commission members' concerns and input. This is what I'd like to use this time to discuss some of our ordinances and procedures. Can't bring up the process as far as what's going to be discussed, but I know that we've had discussion before about the line of sight and the 25-foot setback on the lake on L1. And I don't know if it would be proper to even discuss it as far as a particular property, but not voting on it, so I guess it wouldn't really matter, right?
Yes, because he's on PBA.
So I, a little bit too much spread. But not going to discuss the case, but I know that there's particular property that the line of sight does not apply to the point that you could get a line of sight without infringing either on the lake or infringing further back because of the contour of the lake. And I think in this one particular case, our line of sight might be superseding over our actual ordinance of our 25-foot setback. Because at any time that that line of sight can infringe on that, one way or the other, whether it makes it greater or less, especially less than 25 feet. But I mean, people get a variance and they want to get it up. Well, we're not the BZA, can't decide on that. But at the same time, once you get a variance and you're going by a line of sight in a future process, when somebody's got a variance that goes back, you're still changing any distance that's going to be required other than that 25-foot setback. And the 25-foot setback ordinance, when it was put into effect, it was put into effect to protect the lake. And the line of sight, from my personal opinion only, I think this line of sight is only benefiting the property owners on each side that they already got permit to build their house or prior, whatever. And now, subject to two pieces of property, the person in the middle is going to have to be justified by the other two properties. And that would be actually not even looking at the 25-foot setback. We're looking at a line of sight. Now, I know the line of sight was used as a practice, was never even written into the ordinances before. But now we've actually got it written into the ordinances. So now we're at a place where did we create kind of quantum that's going to cause problems later on. Look at it. And I still look at the legal aspect as far as our ordinance being, because if you have a 25-foot setback, but the line of sight is stopping you from putting your house, say 40 feet. Now, people on the right had that choice, but they chose to keep it back. Now, this guy put a new home and the property in the middle has no choice
To go off of the property.
to go from his 25-foot setback. No longer the ordinance even going to apply to him anymore.
He has no choice.
And because of the line of sight.
Strictly line of sight.
And I don't know as far as where the legal aspect's going to come in when you come up and you restrict on somebody on 25-foot setback.
Hey, Barry, this is Russ. You hear me?
Russ Mason.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, with all due respect, you guys overcomplicate everything. The reason that provision was put into the ordinance, very simple, very straightforward, is to protect the view of the lake of the two adjacent homeowners. That was the only reason.
Right.
So yes, it does penalize the person in the middle, but it's for the benefit of the people on either side. So it's a very simple thing in the ordinance. And I don't know why you guys are trying to overcomplicate it. You know, it just doesn't make any sense.
I don't think anybody's overcomplicated it, Russ. We know what it says. We know how it applies. We're just trying to decide, should it even be in our book?
When we have ordinance, Russ, the ordinances are supposed to be pretty consistent with opportunity of property and the care of property, the same as the one before him and the one after that. So the ordinances should be written to where everything is held at a consistency. The line of sight on a lake is not a consistency at all times.
I,
Contour of the lake.
I don't understand what you mean by that. I mean, if,
Here's a straight
like I
line.
said, oversimplification, if you think that's what it is, simply is put in place so that the guy in the middle couldn't build his house 25 feet from the lake and be 30 feet or 25 feet in front of the two people on either side, blocking their view of the lake. That's the whole idea. That's why the line of sight is there. So that if two houses are on either side are sitting 45 feet back, Russ Mason can't build a house in the middle that's 25 feet away from the lake, which is the minimum, of course. Because when he builds that house, he actually blocks the two people on either side. That's why that provision is in the ordinance. It has been for a long time, and that's why it's there.
All right, Russ, listen. When that person built that house 40 feet from the lake, he had a choice at the time he built that lake, correct?
I don't know the circumstances. I can't say. They're all different.
Right. But I mean, at some point or another, when that house was built, it was chosen to build it 40 feet off the lake or whatever they wanted to do on that property.
Well, maybe the railroad went by then and he couldn't because he didn't have the right of way.
Well, that's fine. He had a hardship at that time then. But that don't mean the railroad is supposed to affect the next property when he puts one in. In other words, you're saying that one person was restricted due to a hardship, and then the next person is going to be restricted to the same hardship when it doesn't even exist anymore.
Okay, let me just turn it around then, okay? Are you saying if you take that provision out of the ordinance, okay, we got these two properties that are sitting 40 feet back. You're saying that when Russ Mason wants to build a house in the middle, he can put it 25 feet back and block the other people? That's okay with you guys?
I'm saying, should it be by line of sight when anybody prior to that could have used the 25-foot setback, which was written ordinance that time? That line of sight was added at one time.
But you can't decide what happened back when. You can't say, well, they should have done this and that back then. Maybe there were good reasons why. Like I said, maybe the railroad went by and they couldn't set it 25 feet away.
To satisfy the next door, and you're stopping the person that's wanting to build a house on the property that had to have the same opportunity as the guy that built the house on the left.
Well, he can build it 40 feet back, just like the guys on either side.
He can. You're saying he has to.
Yes, I'm saying he has to. That's, I meant the way the ordinance is written. But
So
if you take that away, he's going to be able to build 25 feet back and he's going to block either neighbor. Is that acceptable?
Just debate that.
Is that acceptable?
Okay, hold on, Russ. Just a minute, please.
So, Barry, if I understood your concern, it's thinking about the contour of the lake. We have areas, you got two properties, but then say, I don't know, let's say we're talking about the property that sticks out into the lake.
Yeah.
And there's effectively, if you just went a straight line of sight, you might not make it buildable at all.
Put it in the water.
Because it would be so far forward, yet you still come 25 feet back, but it would block line of sight just because of the contour of the lake. Is that kind of the issue that you're concerned about?
That can be.
Okay,
I mean, I'm trying to avoid this problem coming up.
I see that one.
And at the same time, Russ, I'd like to ask the question is, if we use the line of sight, is that all we should use and not use the 25-foot setback? Because you're gonna have times that a variance is issued and allowed because we had it with houses on the west shore that they're already less than 25 feet. And every time that somebody gets a variance to put that house less than 25, which you're using the ordinance to get a variance, but now you're gonna take the line of sight and restrict it even more.
The way I know the ordinance as it's written, the minimum you can be to the lake is 25 feet. So that's the first rule. That takes precedence over any other rule. So you can never be closer than 25 feet, new construction. I'm not saying that there aren't houses that are already closer than that. But the point is, a new construction could not be closer than 25 feet without a variance. That's the first rule. You gotta go by that rule first. And then if that rule doesn't apply, then you go by the line of sight rule. That's the secondary check.
No, you're saying that it doesn't apply. You say you look at that first. All right, if they're
You look
within.
at the 25 feet
Now
first.
you're saying that if it's more, if they're in front of somebody else's house that built back, now the line of sight takes precedence over the ordinance.
No, I'm saying that the first rule is the 25 feet. You can never build anything closer to the lake than 25 feet without a variance. Forget about the line of sight rule. Doesn't even apply. Your house has to be at least 25 feet away. So if the two houses on either side are 15 feet away from the lake, that doesn't give you permission to put yours 15 foot from the lake unless you get a variance. Because you have to be 25 feet.
It only applies when you want it to.
You're overcomplicating this stuff. It's very
No,
straightforward.
you overcomplicate because you're trying to make the line of sight the number one preference. And
When did
the
I
line of
say
sight
that? I
cannot-
just got through saying that the 25 feet is the first rule. You
Okay.
can't be closer than 25 feet, even if your neighbors are closer than 25 feet. Even if your neighbors are closer. That's the first rule. 25 feet is the first rule. Line of sight doesn't come into play until you pass that first test.
I appreciate your opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm done talking.
Anybody else online have anything to say? Since we opened. But I would really love for this issue to be actually thought of and discussed between us to realize that we can, or maybe we already have opened a can of worms that we will not be able to undo. Because our line of sight, it should have provisions if you use the line of sight only applied in certain circumstances. But it should never restrict a homeowner from being able to use his property, especially on the lake. How are you gonna say that you cannot build your house because you only want 25 feet from the lake because of the use that you want on that thing, on that lake property? And if we have an ordinance that's gonna allow somebody to make that choice, if he wants 60 feet because he wants the big front yard. Next guy wants a smaller yard, he wants his house closer because he's gonna be able to do what he wants to do in his yard.
Yeah, it took me a while, but I see your point. I mean, this ordinance would be easy to apply if we're building on the shore of a swimming pool, perfectly straight lines, but we're not.
We had a square lake.
Yeah, we had a square rectangular lake, but I think it is hard to apply as it's written.
But I just want everybody to really honestly see that I think as far as if a judge, I'm not saying we take it before a judge, I'm saying somebody with the over final say as far as what's right and what's wrong, when you come up and you say you've got an ordinance set up 25 feet, and which is to protect the lake. Well, at the same time, you know that anybody that buys that property on L1, they've got 25 feet from the lake, and they've got 25 feet from the road or whatever it is, and that's their area they can build the house. Now, when you come up with, you've got another added part of your ordinance saying, well, now this guy has to move it back. Now he's restricted to only 30% of his property to build his house, but the other guy had 70, 80% of the property built. So every time that you have a permit, then you're gonna be hurting the next person, and so be. I just don't see that. I don't see how that can be right.
Does
That's an
that come
opposition
up a
over,
lot?
Hmm?
Does that come up a lot?
the line of sight is coming up a lot.
People, if they could, and build 2 feet off the lake or
Well,
1 foot off the
But you
lake.
got 25 feet to stop that.
Yeah,
In other words, the only time we can talk about 2 feet off the lake, whatever, is at a different meeting. It's in
Yeah.
3CA, not here.
Building the same
I
footprint.
think that the way the ordinance is written sounds good to me. You got 2 properties that are back 40 feet. The property in the middle should also be built that. on the
So
same
you're saying that the
direction.
guy in the middle can only build his house at 40 feet because the
Right.
other two chose to do it at 40 feet. They had the opportunity to go 25. Now, this person doesn't have the same opportunity as the man beside him. So now you've got an ordinance that's gonna restrict one
What was the
from what the
time,
next person, the other person did.
what was the time involved in that? You know, it may have been 50 years before that.
But
And, so somebody comes in and they want to build 25 feet back, which, you know, they agree with Russ, is blocking the view of the other 2 people.
Right, but did that person put that house there because of the view? And if they did, knowing that there's no property between them two, because I think the only protection is you've got the property looking at the lake, you've got a view. That's what you're buying. That's what, east side, that's what you're paying for, what sunshine, go down. That's why property on the east side of the lake is higher than what it is on the west side. But when you sit there and that property side to side, you're paying the same price for that property, that guy paid that property. And you had the option to build on anywhere up to 25 feet. Now, the guy on the other side had the same option to build up, but they both decided to stay back 40. Maybe one was 35, the other was 50.
And maybe they bought it when it was already 40 feet back and built on
Yeah.
a long
All
time
right,
ago.
and let's say you've got a road that comes down through here, and when you get up here, this guy's property on the other side, it's closer to the lake. Now, you're still gonna go a line of sight, but the road ain't got anything to do with line of sight. But yet you're still restricting that guy in the middle because that's property, and he's gonna make him move it back further. Now he's putting it on the road. So you're gonna have a happy medium somewhere here. That's what is right.
Hey, Barry, I gotta butt in again because you've been talking. You've been talking for 25 minutes about your point of view. So let me give you mine.
Chuck,
Let's everybody look at the West Shore, okay? Look at the West Shore where the houses are. If you remove that
Hey, Russ,
restriction about the average, if you remove the average, then I can build a house 25 feet away from the lake, way in front of those houses on the West Shore that are sitting back.
You restated your opinion over and over. Thank you.
Okay, what's the language gonna look like? That's what I want to see.
That's what I'm discussing right now. That's why I want everybody to consider this.
Um,
Truthfully, on everybody's side. I know I am, Russ, the one that is presenting this. That's the reason I have the concern. But if you think there's wording somewhere that needs to be added, taken away, I'm open to all suggestions from all members. I do not run this commission. You guys are appointed here because of your knowledge, your heartfelt passion for the lake. I mean, I think that's a whole lot of it right here, but our position is still to be right by our ordinances, that they won't be ambiguous or restrictive to one and not the other.
like the way it's written right now.
The way it's written is not a problem. It's the way the process comes out because of the shape of the lake, because of the prior buildings and property. If I go out and pay $1.5 million for a piece of property, I'm not gonna come up with one tell me that I can't build my house on my property because the guy next door didn't want to. I don't know that that's gonna hold up in court.
Find out.
I don't want to have to get an ordinance for the town's gonna be spending $10,000 to go to court, somebody takes them to court over our ordinance. And it's our position to write an ordinance that is right. I'm not saying right or wrong. If everybody in here agrees that's the way the ordinance is, we write it out.
I think I'm coming to you that I think it's problematic the way it's written. I think what I would want to understand more of are kind of real life examples, or even looking at the lake and our properties, where might this be a problem going forward?
One example, come Thursday night.
Is that this Thursday?
Yes.
Okay.
6:30.
6:30.
What meeting?
BZA.
Yeah,
We have a case that's exactly that.
Oh,
could you just tell us which one it is so I can find it on the agenda with the address?
1150 South Street.
Okay. That'd be helpful, actually. I would just be concerned about coming to any interpretation here that would make something unbuildable that otherwise would be.
The situation could come that way.
Like, yeah,
It's, the property's not unbuildable as it is. But they need some side variances, and they're looking at this front, what Barry's alluding to, and, you know, the 25-foot setback and the line of sight from the neighbors, and lawyers involved, and it's kind of getting a little dicey.
okay.
So that's kind of.
Under this situation, and we don't know the outcome. And but under right now, they're trying to abide by the line of sight, and by doing so, it's going to require a variance.
So they can build within that line.
So they can build within that line. If they hold to the line of sight, they can build, but they need variance. Is that correct?
Well, they need a variance from the side yard setback.
Side yard setback.
They don't
because
need
of the shape of
it's
the
not,
property.
it's not the front though.
But if you're gonna get a variance, if you're requiring some kind of, I say hardship loosely, because the hardship is not necessarily hardship. But when you have a line of sight and ordinances creating a variance needed for the property, and I think that we have something here that we need to look at. And that's all I can say on that, because I come Thursday night, and I think it's gonna open some eyes, because you're hearing both sides.
I think if I understand what you're saying, it's the 25-foot setback on most places around the lake is gonna be a moot point, because it's gonna have to be determined by the line of sight. Then when you're doing that line of sight, now that's impacting that person because of the setback from the road, depending on where it's located, or even a side yard setback.
It could impact the size of his house.
Yeah, I mean, they're not gonna be able to build the size.
You're talking about a view being more important than
Yeah.
the actual value of their property could be if they was going according to the ordinance. Going back with setback. order. That requirement seems like it's less needed at any time, or even less addressed at any time since we moved forward with their line of sight. The line of sight at one time seemed like that was ideal, but it's no different than a lot of other ordinances that we've had. We find out we have to change those because it has to fit what they're actually trying to do.
I guess another aspect, which is just gonna further muddy the waters on this whole thing, is line of sight based on how far those two properties are from the central one. Because if they're 100 foot from the house on this side and 50 foot from the other house on the other side, and you're using a straight line, maybe that first house is gonna sit so far forward, they'd have to crank their neck back to even see their neighbor. And so then it's only affecting the one that's behind.
That's absolutely correct.
Absolutely.
That's why you almost had, every case is
Yeah.
different, and you've gotta, you know,
But if you're
whatever
creating,
it is, you know, every case is different. I mean,
So let's,
side yard setbacks are different, everything's different.
right, And that's my whole point on this, and not going back just to the line of sight, but anytime you have an order that creates the need for more variances, then there's either a problem with the BZA or a problem with the planning commission. And usually if it has to keep going, if it has to be brought before the BZA because of the ordinances we create, then it's definitely in the hands of the planning commission.
So would there be a way for us to rewrite the ordinance of less than what is coming before
Right.
PCA?
And that's the reason I bring up the legal aspect of it, because I think it ought to be some kind of, whether it be town attorney or whatever, that can actually address this and guide us to the point that we're not still just making it better, just be less lawsuits or whatever you want to call it. But I just feel like our responsibility here is, if you read what your actual responsibility is, it's not a preference on our part, what we'd like to see. I mean, we think the yellow house is ugly and red and pretty, but it doesn't even concern us. You know, it's just, if that person wants to paint their house pink, this one wants to paint it pink, it's the same, you know. I'm just using that loosely because I don't want to say no when I have to. I just think it should be the same opportunity to use your property in the same way. That's why we have the setbacks in towns. We have the setback from the road. And it's all set up for a reason. It's for safety, vision, which you might want to call line of sight. But it's still for a purpose. That's why you got on the road, you have two 25-foot setbacks on your property. It's for safety and view, but it's a view of safety. I really have a hard time having an ordinance that's going to give a property owner the right to keep somebody on the left of him to build what they want to according to ordinances, just because they can't see an angle back that way. I mean, we had one L1 guy, and I'm talking about more than I probably should, everybody else talking. But they wanted to put up a privacy fence on their property because you could go right down the road a little bit, and you could see all kinds of lakes. So he wasn't obstructing view from up. In that argument, where they come up, he's containing his view, and then you have your view somewhere else. Why is somebody else's position to make sure you've got more than you want or need? Where does that view stop? Where is it containable? Where is it our right to do it? That's really all I got to say about it. Yeah, anybody else has anything? I really feel pretty concerned about this. There's no reason I want to bring it up. But has anything on this? I do have one other concern. I know saying here, but Chuck, was there ever a permit even issued on the old hardware store? They changed the door use of that property. I know it was during the corona and everything else. But yeah, Steve Hardware. I had hardware.
Auto parts.
Auto park.
Oh, okay, you said hard, right? Yeah, I didn't know where. you were
Yeah,
talking
I
about.
messed up on that. Next to us.
Right, yeah, you're right,
Right
across
next
the
door.
street, right next door.
Where's it located at?
It's Western.
Maine and Madison.
No, but what's Carson?
Yeah, but I mean, they took that whole front off, put that
Yes.
door on. But I know, I mean, this is kind of clarifying a little bit for you too, I guess. And like that, I'm not pointing fingers, I just want to know what was ever proceeded on this. right
Not my
here.
client, I didn't do it, I
I
was
know.
just talking to it.
I know,
Did he need a permit to do anything with that?
well, yeah, you can't change you can put a door in front, change the structure of the building.
Because
So
of
it
the
has a door there, you
structural
can
change.
change it. Do I?
Because it was a structural change.
It's Madison and what?
I mean, ready.
Southeast.
Southeast corner. Second corner from.
Appreciate.
Appreciates.
It's Culver Hardware, that's what we're talking about.
Auto.
It used to be over
It would
The auto
parts
parts.
across Madison
Lake-
from it.
Lakeside Auto.
Lakeside Auto.
Auto, that's what it was.
Healing center.
Yeah. Yeah, I was after his house, visiting probably 2 months for that.
It'll take me some time to research, because I've got to get back into the county's website.
Yeah. Man, I know it was during the corona stuff, and a lot of stuff that probably missed or whatever, but I don't know what their actual use of it is. Do you have an idea, Kevin, what he even uses that building for, other than?
He does custom car bodies.
Custom carbides?
Yeah,
That's what he
so,
does.
some metal work, aluminum stuff, he brings in specialty cars and remakes the bodies. Got some interesting stuff in there,
Yeah, I bet.
and it's not a retail establishment really, he has clients basically all over the country that send him stuff, he does it, sends them back out.
So it's pretty much just a center, pretty bit
It's a what?
centered, like centralized.
Yeah.
That's what he does.
He was doing this in Florida and came up here again during the pandemic to get away from a bigger city, and his business is mostly over the internet, word of mouth. He can do it kind of anywhere. I'm relatively certain he didn't get a permit, but he also did all the work himself too. So it's one of those.
Right, you change your structure yourself, you still have to have permit. Yeah. No, I'm just concerned on. I don't want to pick on anybody. I mean, allowing it to be done without a permit, and you overlook it. What you create. We're getting in the same situation, I think, as far as that fence. Lakeshore, we don't do anything about that. It can become a future issue with other people. They well, they can have it as long as they want until they finally win, whatever. I just don't want to create an atmosphere that's planning commission, we don't do what we're supposed to do. Been several fences, several things done due to the corona, I'm sure at the time, and you were at home and they're not working, they're gonna do whatever they can do. I'm not trying to pick on them, I understand it. But at the same time, it's gonna have to be addressed one way or the other. So. While you're looking at that, anybody else have anything as far as concerns?
I got one.
Yeah.
And since Wayne's not here. I seem to be like, what are you gonna try? What is our vacancy? In other words, I know we have a vacancy, don't we, on the commission?
We have two.
Two?
Still on this one.
What
Two.
are those? What are they reserved for?
One is town employee, that's P. Peterson.
Yes.
And I don't think we ever filled Margaret's, did we? Because Bill Harris, did Bill Harris have that?
I still Bill Harrison.
You filled Harris.
But we never, you're right, you're back on Margaret. So,
I'm thinking that's the two. I'm not,
and what is Margaret's?
I,
A little.
Took Marty's place.
I don't know. That's a good question. I think Joel did.
I think Joel took Marty.
Joel took Marty's place.
Marty was on-
Or did
what's
you,
Marty's last name?
Utterbond.
I took. that.
Yeah.
Marty Esteban.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember he was here a while.
Okay, it was. Whose place did you take Margaret's place? Maybe he did.
Non-political?
I don't know.
What do we actually have as far as political?
Half and half.
I thought I was,
You're a Democrat in the town. I'm a Democrat in the zoning district outside town.
You say that out loud.
I'm very proud of it. Kind of bipartisan.
There you go, there you go.
I'll admit that was me, but we are bipartisan.
I've been playing.
yeah, because it was, had to show voting or registration for the. in the primary.
Right, because I know there was a case I had, somebody had changed their to be on a board.
Karen know what?
Karen,
Margaret, somebody with the head.
Karen would probably know,
Okay.
because she's the one that swears you in. She has to do the swearing in and. Sure, you're fired.
All right, good. See ya.
I just forgot it. That's all.
You weren't sworn in?
No,
You're serious.
I'm serious as a horseback.
That's an issue we need to address.
I'll tell you what, I'll go in tomorrow and have her swear me.
Probably would be good on that part of it. Without being sworn in, your vote may not want to count.
Okay, well, I'm just an observer then. Maybe I should go sit next to David out there then, right? Is that what you're saying?
No, you were appointed by,
I was appointed.
you're appointed under your position that you would.
I suspect it's important.
Did you?
It's just a formality.
I was.
I think we'd be able to extend.
Can we make this like can we make this like a party or something? We have Jenny make some cookies, some of her dad's recipe cookies or something?
Hey, you don't have your card?
No. I believe.
Yeah.
You have to pay when you want Cafe Max, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everything.
Wow. I could be putting that up on my wall.
Oh, I didn't mind his.
Are we very members' concerns?
Yeah, member concerned. Yeah.
I can do that.
After you get the oath of office.
Wow.
certificate.
I'm deprived. I'm.
We have something on.
We gotta take care of this. This has to be addressed.
Evidently, we've got more concerns than we thought.
Yeah, I guess.
No more concerns or input? Are you entertaining a motion?
Oh,
Well, we're still waiting on-
you wanna go around? I got a question for Scott.
Okay.
Did, we ever find a appointee for the BCA? Has that been discussed at all? Okay.
Yes or no?
All right, that's it.
All right, I'll go around. Andy, you got anything you want?
No, sir.
No. There's,
Good.
Joe, you have anything else? I do not.
No, I'm done.
Don, you have anything else? you want to?
Yeah, but wasn't Chuck looking at something for you real quick?
I hate to back up. Go ahead.
Okay, no,
Go ahead.
no, that was it. I was just, we're waiting on Chuck.
Okay.
Okay.
I haven't had a vote.
Oh,
Entertain a motion.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Hit it, please.
In favor?
Aye. Thank you. Please and thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we could look at it, we could vote whatever and check. Yeah, I got something pretty good this
I
morning.
got a plaque, $100 gift certificate.
Wow. And you got free meals at Cafe Max on Saturday morning. Wow.
I got Saturday and.
And Saturday and Sunday.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
I had to go to.
How long have you been on this?
Oh, that's right. There you go.
How long have you been on this?
A couple of, 2 years, 3 years, I don't know. No.
2 months longer than you.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Don't, hey, I know what I'm gonna tell you, don't ever